implementation of the maximum suggested retail price or MSRP. Today is the first day of the implementation of lower maximum SRP for imported rice. This means retailers can only sell imported rice at a maximum price of 55 pesos per kilo. But the Department of Agriculture will be lenient and will allow retailers to sell above this price just to use up their old stock.
Dami antibac.
Ulan! Naumog na pud.
Mahimupod ng walay kulog. Kunay dami antibac power. Alang sa humot, kamurag gibulat sa adlaw.
It's like washing on sunshine with Downy.
The Philippine Central Bank meanwhile vows to keep a measured approach to monetary policy easing. The PSP notes the balance of risks to the inflation outlook continues to lean to the upside, due largely to potential upward adjustments in transport fares and electricity rates. It adds, domestic demand is likely to remain firm but subdued, while private domestic spending is expected to be supported by easing inflation and improving labor market conditions. Jervis Manahan, ABS-CBN News.
Sara Duterte is now the first Philippine vice president to be impeached by the House of Representatives. A majority of congressmen signed a fourth impeachment complaint Wednesday, just hours before the House adjourned its regular session. Vivian Gulia has tonight's top story.
Female voice.
The
Male
total
voice.
number of
Male
House
voice.
members who verified and swore before me
Shift to a nature.
this impeachment complaint
A nature.
is
Shift to a nature.
215.
The House of Representatives plenary hall erupted in applause after House Secretary General Reginald Velasco announced that the
silipin po
required
natin
number
ang
of
time
signatures
check
from
natin sa
members
umagang
to
ito
impeach
sa
Vice
programa
President
natin.
Sara Duterte has been
Okay,
met.
wala nang
Among those seen
headline.
clapping was the President's
Okay,
son,
ay 44
House Senior Deputy
minutos
Majority
po
Leader
pasado
Sandro
alas
Marcos.
6.
He was also
Okay,
the first to
checking
sign the
natin.
fourth impeachment complaint,
And then ang kalendaryo
even when his
natin
father
ay,
previously said, now is
12
not
po
the
ng
time for the
Pebrero,
impeachment.
2025.
Marcos was followed by House Senior Deputy
At saka
Speaker
araw
Aurelio
po ng
Gonzalez
Miyerkules,
Jr.
mga
and
Supremo.
Majority Leader Manuel Jose Dalipe.
Okay, huwag
Senator
kayong
Raffy
tataka.
Tulfo's son Ralph and wife
bakit
Jocelyn,
ganun ang,
Senator Francis Tolentino's niece
programa
Aniela,
natin, mga
and last to
Supremo.
sign was House Speaker Martin
Okay.
Romualdez.
Kagabi
Among those
nga,
who did not sign the complaint
magprograma ko
are
tatlong
former
beses,
President
dalawang
Gloria
beses
Macapagal Arroyo,
natanggal-
House
na
Deputy
wala nang
Speaker
ilaw, no?
Camille Villar, and
Okay,
House Deputy
naka-intro
Majority
lang ako
Leader
kagabi,
Erwin
and then
Tulfo.
hindi na maka-
There is a
Hindi
motion
ko
to
na
direct the Secretary
pinagpapatuloy,
General
no?
to immediately endorse
Okay,
to the
Brown
Senate the impeachment
Dito sa
complaint,
amin.
having been filed by more than one-third of the membership of the
Ayan.
House, or a total
So,
of
sa awa
215
ng,
members. Is there any objection?
Panginoon.
The chair hears none.
Okay, tuloy-tuloy
The
lang ang
motion is
programa
approved.
natin, no?
The Secretary General
Okay, sige
is
na.
so directed.
Okay,
The session is suspended.
basta non-stop po ng programa. Okay. Okay, babati tayo. Magandang
The complaint
umaga.
alleges
Good
that
morning,
Duterte
good morning,
is
good morning,
unfit
good
for
morning.
public office due to actions that complainants
Okay, sa
claim
mga minorities,
amount to culpable
Assalamualaikum
violations of the
warahmatullahi
Constitution,
ta'ala wabarakatuh,
flagrant
no?
betrayal of public trust,
Okay.
graft and corruption, and other high crimes.
Importante ang,
It enumerated 7
news
articles of
natin
impeachment as
non-stop.
grounds, including allegedly contacting
kahit
an
ganito
assassin
nakahigpit
and
po
plotting
ng,
to kill President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., First Lady
itong,
Liza Araneta Marcos, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez.
ginagalawan
Alleged
natin,
misuse
no?
and malversation of confidential
Okay, hindi ko
funds
maintindihan
appropriated
bakit
to the
yan
office
ganyan.
of the Vice President
Okay.
and the Department of Education. Alleged bribery of
yung
DepEd
mga
officials,
platform.
alleged unexplained wealth and
Okay.
failure to disclose all her properties in her statement of assets,
Hindi po pwede
liabilities,
magamit,
and
no?
net worth or SALN.
Okay, kaya
Alleged acts
gumagamit
of
tayo ng mga
destabilization
alternative,
and the totality of her conduct
Okay,
that are allegedly
gadget.
against the Constitution.
Okay, para
matatag ang ebidensya and ang ebidensya mismo nanggaling sa
So,
respondent
magandang
sa kinasuhan.
umaga. Good morning, good morning.
These are very grave and serious offenses and violation of the Constitution. And I'm confident. We have a strong case for impeachment. Galing yan sa investigation mismo ng House of Representatives.
Sariling tahanan.
Defensor is among the 11 congressmen designated as prosecutors for the impeachment trial against Duterte, including Representatives Jervil Luistro, Romeo Acop, Rog Gutierrez, Joel Chua, Raul Angelo Bongalon, Loreto Atcharon, Marcelino Libanan, Arnan Panaligan, and Isabel Maria Zamora. Before the session adjourned, House Speaker Romualdez issued this statement.
Isinulong natin ang interes ng sambayanan laban sa mga puwersa ng kadiliman. We are here to serve the people.
Okay, dito tayo sa sariling tahanan po ng ADLSN TV News Online.
Is beyond the reach
banner
of the law.
program ng Halo-Halo Special Opinion Balita.
The first 3 impeachment complaints filed against Duterte have been archived. Despite this, complainants and endorsers are optimistic about the chances of the 4th impeachment complaint in the Senate.
Malapit na ang due date ni Sara Duterte. Sa dulo naman, pag malaki ang suporta ng taong bayan, the Senate will have to yield to the will of the people. We hope that the President will not stand in the way of accountability and justice.
The Vice President has yet to issue a comment, but her brother, Davao City 1st District Representative Paulo Duterte, expressed dismay over what he tagged as an act of political persecution. He asserted the impeachment complaint has no basis. Representative Duterte claimed Iloilo Representative Janet Garin led the efforts to collect signatures from fellow congressmen, which she denied.
Definitely, no, it's not true. It's fake news. The statement of Congressman Paulo Duterte is unfounded. It would have been good if he will attend sessions and meetings in Congress so that he can get the correct and first-hand information.
Garin was referring to the caucus on Wednesday morning where the impeachment was discussed. The Davao City Solon warned that Filipino people will not sit idly by as the government supposedly undermines democracy and silences opposition. He said if the Marcos administration thinks it can push the impeachment without consequence, they are gravely mistaken. The impeachment complaint against Vice President Duterte was transmitted to the Senate on Wednesday afternoon for its action. Meantime, the House of Representatives has adjourned. Vivian Gulia, ABS-CBN News.
The articles of impeachment against the Philippine Vice President are now with the Senate, but the upper chamber adjourned its session Wednesday, making an impeachment trial unlikely until after the May midterm elections. RG Cruz joins us on the line to give us more details. Go ahead, RG.
Hi, Tia. Good evening. The Senate has adjourned its session until June 2025 without tackling or beating out the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte earlier today. Upon a motion of Senator Joel Villanueva, Senate President Francis Escudero adjourned the session until June 2 without the articles of impeachment on the agenda. No one objected in the moments between the time the motion was made and when the Senate chief approved the motion to adjourn. Escudero did not speak immediately after the session, but another way out. Escudero is expected to be adjourned at the Capitan Copenado on Thursday morning. Senate Minority Leader Aquino Benitez III, himself a former Senate President, pointed out that in the normal course of business, the complaint will have to be held under the rules in June when the Senate resumes its session. It's because the complaint has to be reported first to the Senate by its secretary during its plenary session before the Senate can decide what to do next. However, Pimentel also explained that this rule can be waived if all senators unanimously agree to waive this rule. This means even allies of the Vice President will have to agree to the waiver. That's it. That's the latest from the Senate.
Thank you very much, RG. Law professor and ex-Congressman Barry Gutierrez believes the Philippine Senate can still convene as an impeachment court even after it adjourned its regular session. Gutierrez points out that a Senate impeachment tribunal can exist differently from the Senate as a legislative chamber. He says the impeachment court is not subject to the schedule prescribed by the legislative calendar. Meanwhile, Salvador Panelo, a staunch ally of the the Dutertes comes to the defense of the VP. The former chief presidential legal counsel accused Congress of railroading the process. Panelo also denounced the impeachment as an attempt to destroy Duterte's reputation and possibly her political chances in the 2028 presidential election.
The newly installed chief of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation vows to cure the beleaguered agency of inefficiency and wastage. Edwin Mercado says he will consider a revamp of the controversial health insurer. This story from Pia Gutierrez.
Liability na for those who are left.
Nanood naman siya. Winashing na, kinuskus mo pa. Switch to new Ariel Power Liquid. 15 minutes lang. Bilis-linis ang mancha. No more kuskus sa washing machine. 750 lang per wash ang Ariel Liquid.
So liable pa rin siya kahit sa tumarik. But the Congresswoman Kimbo was quick.
The Philippine Health Insurance Corporation will abide by whatever the Supreme Court will rule on the controversial transfer of PhilHealth's excess funds to the National Treasury. This according to the state health insurer's new president and CEO, Dr. Edwin Mercado, a day after he was sworn in by President Marcos Jr. in Malacanang. The Supreme Court on Tuesday began hearing oral arguments on the transfer of billions of unused PhilHealth funds back to government coffers, which petitioners argued is unconstitutional.
Sa issue po nung 89.7 billion na binanggit nyo, sa kasalukuyan po, meron na pong prosesong na nangyayari sa Supreme Court. We respect the process that the Supreme Court is undergoing, and we will abide by whatever ruling the Supreme Court will have.
Mercado, a U.S.-trained doctor, medical researcher, and longtime hospital administrator, meanwhile vowed to heal the various illnesses plaguing the state health insurer, including issues of inefficiency and wastage. All these while further expanding the benefits of members and reducing the out-of-pocket expenses for ordinary Filipinos facing health emergencies.
Ako di naman gagamot, parang tinitingnan ko rin po ang PhilHealth na may sakit. At inaalam ko rin po ano yung dulas. So yun po yung hopefully nga po makapaglabas kami ng mga panibagong procedure para yung mga causes ay ma-identify at yung mga minor lang naman ay maituloy kaagad. So yun po ay hindi lang prospectively kundi also retroactive. So yung mga datihang denied claims, aaralin po namin kung ano po naman yung pwede nang mabayaran kung ang basihan po ay maiset namin na in compliance din po syempre sa COA rules.
The new chief says he will conduct a review of existing PhilHealth staff, but clarifies it's not a witch hunt and is meant to improve services.
Magkakaroon po tayo ng review ng mga staff. Pero sa ngayon po ang ating pong pinahahayag is we're here to heal and to bridge. Hindi ho tayo
okay, unahin ko muna ang national, plugging natin po mga kababayan.
Sa ating mga
katulad sinabi ko kahapon, pwede na tayo magsabi kotohan po itong mga tao, itong mga suki, no?
mag-bridge. At tingnan din po kung ano pa yung pwede namin may contribute, ano pa ang mai-contribute ko sa pagpapalawig ng benepisyo at pag-improve ng proseso.
A resource person who snubbed a Philippine congressional probe on fake news defies the show cause order filed by a joint House panel against her. Pro-Duterte journalist Crisette Chu sent a letter to Tri-Committee Chairman Dan Fernandez defending her boycott of the hearing. Chu insists the hearing aimed at regulating social media is unconstitutional. She also likened the probe to the Philippine martial law era, during which the Marcos Sr. dictatorship curtailed the right to free speech. Communication experts at Tuesday's hearing also warned against weaponizing legislation against alleged fake news. Veteran journalist Vergel Santos insists
pinaplugin natin,
Congress has no business imposing controls on free expression.
Senator,
The last time I read the
okay, itong si
Constitution,
Mr. Pusap.
it says that no law
Okay, mga
may be
hilig po
passed
magpusap.
abridging this freedom.
Okay, itong
You
si-
find out the truth
Okay,
benders,
retired
the
Colonel
liars, and everybody
Ariel
else,
Kerubin, no?
and then take them to
Okay,
court
nakita ko sa
and let
kanyang
them
page,
pay
okay,
for
nagpusap
the
lang
wrongs
siya
they have
mga
done
sabi,
in
no?
court. It is the court
Okay,
that
dapat
can only resolve this
Colonel,
type
dapat
of issue.
ilakasan mo ang pag...
Several Philippine lawmakers expressed their support for
punta mo
bills
sa mga
granting a new
community,
broadcast
no?
franchise to
Okay,
ABS-CBN. Members of the House
makakuha
Legislative
ka ng,
Franchise Committee took this position Wednesday
maraming botong
after the
kaso,
Competition Commission told them that 93% of the Philippine
Okay,
TV
iba ng,
industry
social media,
is
kailangan
dominated by the
mag-ikot ka
GMA
ng,
network. 5
Okay.
House bills call for the grant of a new franchise to ABS-CBN. The country's telecom regulator says there are broadcast frequencies available for ABS-CBN should it be given a new franchise.
so
The
sino
network
ang,
was ordered to shut down its broadcast operations in May 2020 after House lawmakers accused it of unsubstantiated franchise violations. ABS-CBN is the parent company of this news channel.
Okay, dating maring...
Hindi pwedeng isang TV station lang ang magdodomina. Makikita naman po talaga natin yung presentation ng PCC na the granting of a franchise to ABS-CBN is well justified.
pangalawang araw na, no,
This Congress should rectify the error and the injustice inflicted on ABS-CBN.
no? Okay, yung mga kakandidato sa senador, 2 araw na. Ayan. Okay, so alahanin natin. Okay, mga maniwala sa programa ko ay mga followers. Okay, dala po itong si Colonel Kerubin, no? Okay, retired Colonel. Okay, sino pangalawa? Okay, kaya inuna ko ito ang plugging natin, no? Ang pangalawa, itong si Atty. Rodante Marcoleta. Ayan. Ayan po ang pangalawang listahan para makakuha po ng upuan po sa Senado. Okay, si Atty. Rodante Marcoleta.
The Philippines ends 2024 with 16.05 trillion pesos in national debt. This is 9.8% higher than the 2023 debt total. The Treasury Bureau says the increase is mainly due to the net issuance of debt instruments to fund the government's deficit program. The peso's depreciation against the US dollar also added another 208.73 billion pesos to the country's debt. This brought the debt to GDP ratio to 60.7%. That's slightly above the 60% international standard and the Philippine government's 60.6% target. Philippine President Marcos Jr. urges Filipinos to pay proper taxes and warns evaders they will be dealt with sternly. The president spoke during the launch of the Internal Revenue Bureau's 2025 National Tax Campaign. He says the Bureau's recent efforts, such as digitalization, are expected to boost collections and increase government revenue. Marcos Jr. assumed office in 2022 amid questions over his family's 200 billion peso estate tax deficiency.
And I say this with hope and with sternness. Hope that we all see
okay,
the value in contributing to our
pangapat,
country and that the law will deal sternly against those who
Superstar,
exploit the system
Davao del Sur.
unfairly. To the
bayan po
BRR,
ng,
your mandate is
Santa
clear.
Cruz
Be watchful. Be guardians of a system that ensures that every peso that is collected is channeled into programs that serve our people.
Philippine agriculture officials defend the emergency sale of rice buffer stocks held by the National Food Authority. The move aims to bring down rice prices but will result in huge monetary losses for the rice regulator. Jervis Manahan has the details.
The National Food Authority will soon release their 300,000 metric tons of buffer stock of rice. This comes after the official declaration of the food security emergency of the Department of Agriculture due to consistently high prices. The agency says despite the downward trend in rice inflation since the latter part of 2024, rice prices in the country remain elevated.
Gusto ulit namin linawin na ang deklarasyon ng food security emergency ay dahil lamang sa extraordinary increase sa presyo ng bigas at hindi dahil sa kulang ang supply ng bigas sa ating sa bansa na itinatakda ng Republic Act 12078 o yung amenda sa rice tarification.
With this measure in place, the Department of Agriculture through the Food Terminal Incorporated will now be able to sell rice to local government units
Ito
and
sa
GNCCs
Supernova
at 23
natin,
pesos per kilo.
isa rin.
LGUs may
Sabi
impose a
niya,
2 peso
gusto niya
markup and sell rice to the public at
Sana hindi
35 pesos
nasasali
per
sa-
kilo, which is way
Okay,
cheaper than
sa
prevailing market
linya po
prices.
ng,
Government hopes
national
this move will
candidates, no?
influence commercial
Kahit
rice
administration
retailers
candidates.
to bring down prices. It is
Balak niya
expected
ay
that this
bumukod sa
price
mga
will
bagay
influence
kung gusto
commercial
niya
rice
independent.
prices to be
Pero,
lower. However, there is a
nung rally sa
downside.
Lawag,
The NFA will
Lawag,
have to absorb a loss of
province,
12 to 15 pesos per kilo,
ano ba yung
or
province
approximately
kasi?
2 billion
Nandun siya
pesos.
Nagkaroon po tayo ng
kasama rin sa
pricing framework
administration
na
ticket
isinumite sa
Okay,
NFA Council
pinangarap
upang
nila ay
approve.
12-0 daw.
Initially nga po, 38 yung naging recommendation, pero ngayon po dahil kailangan na mai-release yung mga stocks at
yan po ang
makakreate
latest na
ng
balita
space.
po kay
Minabuti po
Senator
na mas
Raymond
ibaba pa
Marcos
ito at
Sumaso.
33 to LGUs and then 35 doon sa mga
Sino po ang
publiko na
susunod,
pipili.
no?
The NFA is now communicating with
after
LGUs to
Marcos,
check their interest in
itong
joining the
pahila ng
program.
pataas.
Warehouses of the
Okay,
National Food Authority like this one in
ay,
Valenzuela are
balik
currently
Senado
full
po
of
itong
buffer
si
stock of
Bang
rice.
Aquino, no?
Part of the
Palagay
goal of the
ko,
Declaration of Food Security
okay,
Emergency is to release
kahit
this
sa
stock at
huling
much
slot
lower
yan,
prices and to make space so that
papasok
the
ito
agency
si-
can buy more rice from
Okay,
farmers
papasok pa
at the
si
upcoming
Bang
harvest
Aquino, no?
season.
Okay,
The food security emergency will be reviewed regularly. Senate President Francis Escudero has expressed support for this initiative.
Ang pinakamalaking rason kung bakit mataas ang inflation natin ay food inflation. Kapag ka mapababa natin ang presyo ng bigas at mga pangunahing bilihin at pagkain, bababa ng malaking porsyento ang ating inflation. So tama lang natutukan yan ng administrasyon.
But not everyone is on board. Progressive groups say the emergency declaration will not solve the root of the problem, and only the repeal of the rice tarification law will end farmers' woes and keep rice prices down.
Ang deklarasyong ito ay magtataksil no, sa ating mga magsasaka na matagal nang nahihirapan no, sa mataas na presyo ng gastos ng produksyon.
Ayan, Magic 12
the
yan.
DA announced that the maximum SRP for imported rice will be lowered to 55 pesos per kilo starting this Wednesday. Jervis Manahan, ABS-CBN News.
The Philippine Customs Bureau and cargo forwarders are urged to address the growing issue of unclaimed balikbayan boxes. These are the packages of assorted consumer goods which Filipino migrant workers ship home to their families. Lawmakers are calling for accountability amid mounting complaints of undelivered boxes in the past 3 years. Some recipients claimed cargo forwarders asked them to pay extra before they release their balikbayan boxes.
Growing your dream business and selling products that are loved doesn't have to be a struggle with the right tool like Odoo. Integration of your end-to-end business process makes boring labor as easy as and managing tasks among your team becomes as simple as drag and drop. Let the right tool compile the right data for you to make smart growth strategies with confidence so that you can focus on what really matters to grow your dream business. Unleash your growth potential and let Odoo do the rest.
Now you can enjoy the same fruit goodness of Tag without the sugar. New Tag Fruit Plus. Try now.
Okay, inulit ko Heidi Mendoza.
Pwede po sigurong bumalangkas tayo, Mr. Chair, no, ng isang batas kung saan even if consolidated po yung shipment, maaari po magkaroon ng proseso sa pag-claim nitong balikbayan box sa tax exemption na to. No? Kasi sa present system po natin at dun sa present na batas po natin, ang treatment po per OFW and then per balikbayan vaccine nawawala po yung treatment pag nag-consolidate na po sila.
A new head of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation is appointed by President Marcos Jr. The leadership change coincides with the opening of Supreme Court hearings on petitions opposing the transfer of PhilHealth funds to the National Treasury. Adrian Ayalin has tonight's top story.
Petitioners insisted before the Supreme Court that it is unconstitutional to transfer 89.9 billion funds of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth to the National Treasury. August last year, the group of Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel filed a petition which challenged the constitutionality of the fund transfers, followed by similar petitions filed by Bayan Muna and Isang Bayan. Response to the petition
Okay, sa US mo, bumalik ang mag-reorganize naman po itong Democrats. Okay, para yung mga kandidato nila for governor, for state senator, for
October last year, the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order, but at that time, 60 billion of the 89.9 billion was already released. Speaking for the government, Solicitor General Bernardo Guevara asked during his opening statement to remove the name of President Marcos as one of the respondents, citing presidential immunity. Guevara maintained that there was nothing wrong with the PhilHealth fund transfers.
Contrary to what has been portrayed by some critics, there was no dark or sinister plan behind the transfer of the 16 billion peso fund balance from PhilHealth to the Treasury.
In an official statement, the DOF justified the prudent and moral decision to return supposed excess, idle, and unused government subsidies totaling 89.9 billion. The DOF also insisted that while PhilHealth has already returned 60 billion to the National Treasury, 78% were used for critical health projects. Included in the expenses was 27 billion pesos given to healthcare and non-healthcare workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the question hour, the DOF pointed out that PhilHealth's revenues are higher than its expenditures and had an accumulated fund of 464 billion pesos in 2024. In the 2025 national budget, PhilHealth was given a zero subsidy, but President Marcos Jr. pointed out that the state insurer would still have a reserve of 500 billion even without additional allocation. Associate Justice Amy Lazaro Javier countered that based on commission and audit letters to PhilHealth, the agency was supposedly bankrupt, and from 2021 to 2023, its reserve funds were depleted compared to its actuarial estimates. Before the oral arguments, protesters aired their demands outside the Supreme Court, further assailing the State Insurance Corporation.
Marami sa mga
He was trained orthopedic surgeon who has more than 30 years of hospital management experience. Malacanang did not state why Mercado replaced Emmanuel Ledesma Jr. as PhilHealth chief. Adrian Ayalin, ABS-CBN News.
Philippine Air Force planes join U.S. bombers in a joint exercise over a West Philippine Sea area that's tightly guarded by China's Coast Guard. This report from Bianca Davao.
I choose 99.9%
Ayan.
germ kill.
Okay, so diretso tayo sa balitang hangin. Sino pa ba si
New
Padrina ba?
Safeguard White Camellia 2-in-1 Body Wash. Why choose one? Choose 2-in-1. Upgrade to Safeguard 2-in-1 Body Wash. New Greenwich over! Delicious overload with freshly baked soft crust.
The Philippine Air Force and the United States Pacific Air Forces held joint bomber air patrols and air intercept training over the West Philippine Sea on Tuesday. 3 Philippine F-A-50 lead-in trainer fighter aircraft and 2 US B-1 bombers took part in the one-day exercise, which included flying over part of Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal. This is the first time such drills were conducted over the disputed shoal since US President Donald Trump took office again. The shoal, which is within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, has been under China's control since 2012.
Then they're going to fly within the INFRA, and within that is Bajo de Masinloc, which is part of our territory. Definitely expected that there will be challenges. There might be aircraft, foreign aircraft, probably intercepting or flying near the flight, but they will definitely receive challenges also, especially if they're flying over our territory or near our territory. At the same time, there will be counter challenges as expected, but as for us, we are doing this training based on international rules-based order and based on protocol, so we will just continue on regardless of the action of other foreign actors.
The People's Liberation Army Southern Theater Command also conducted a routine patrol in the area. In a statement, the Chinese military accused the Philippines of trying to undermine peace and stability in the South China Sea by participating in the joint patrols of an external country. PAF spokesperson Colonel Maria Consuelo Castillo said the two air forces did not receive radio challenges and have not sighted PLA aircraft during the drills. Castillo also denied that the exercise between the two allies has something to do with the tension in the West Philippine Sea with Chinese ships, saying that such trainings are conducted regularly. Meanwhile, the 3 PLA Navy vessels earlier monitored to have entered Philippine waters are heading out of the country's EEZ. As of Tuesday morning, the Chinese vessels were located 120 nautical miles south of Basilan. The armed forces of the Philippines started tracking the Chinese vessels on Saturday. One of the ships came from Bajo de Masinloc and proceeded east of Mindoro, where it was joined by 2 other PLA Navy vessels. The vessels were monitored 26 nautical miles southeast of Cuyo Island in Palawan on Sunday. The PLA Navy ships passed through the Sulu Sea and exited through the Basilan Channel. Navy spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad, said the AFP kept a tight watch on the Chinese vessels as they passed through the Philippine archipelagic waters.
They were tracked by FF-17, PS-36, and 4 other Navy ships, 1 Philippine Navy aircraft, and 2 Philippine Air Force aircraft. This entailed the participation of Northern Luzon Command, Western Command, Central Command, and Western Mindanao Command. Our capability to be able to track, to monitor, and to hand over to the succeeding operational commands is a capability that the AFP has already today.
Trinidad explained the PLA Navy vessels exercised archipelagic sea lanes passage, noting that their track is a generally accepted track of merchant vessels traversing north to south of the country. But the official pointed out that the Chinese ships still committed violations.
Yung pagdaan ng mga tatlong barko ng PLA Navy is authorized under UN. Ang pagkakamali nila doon ay yung pagsagot nila sa mga challenge natin. Dapat binabanggit doon kung saan nanggaling, saan pupunta, identify yung barko kung sino sila. Ang sinagot lamang nila is that they are performing freedom of navigation and innocent passage.
Nonetheless, the AFP said that the presence of the PLA Navy vessels in our waters is not a cause for alarm.
The track of the PLA Navy ships is a generally accepted and utilized track of merchant vessels traversing north to south. So yung kanilang pagdaan, hindi nakakaalarma sapagkat parati namang may dumadaan doon. Ang importante, bawat may dumadaan na warship, anumang bansa ay binabantayan po ng Pilipinas.
We remain committed to safeguarding the nation's territorial waters maintaining peace and stability in the region, and upholding national sovereignty.
Bianca Dava, ABS-CBN News.
There are around 200 applicants for 2 positions left vacant by Philippine election commissioners who retired Sunday. Socorro Inting and Marlon Casquejo stepped down after completing their 7-year fixed term. Elections Chief George Garcia hopes President Marcos Jr. will pick replacements from within the commission. Garcia says this would ensure a seamless transition during the poll body's preparations for the May midterm elections. The 2 new commissioners will bring to 5 the number of Marcos Jr. appointees in the 7-member commission.
A resolution passed by the Philippine Election Commission authorizes warrantless arrests of persons engaged in vote buying and vote selling. The commission says anyone arrested for these violations will undergo criminal prosecution. Vote buying and vote selling are considered as election offenses under Philippine election rule. All but 3 of 41 social media personalities invited by a joint Philippine House panel snubbed a hearing on the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Vivian Gulia reports.
Several seats reserved for invited social media personalities were vacant as the House Tri-Committee kicked off on Tuesday its hearing on the spread of misinformation and disinformation in the country. Of the 41 invited to the Tuesday hearing, only 3 showed up.
Ang tatapang sa pagmumura, nang wala tayong kalaban-laban. Ngayon, pag kaharap dito, hindi makaharap dito. Mga takot din pala yung mga yan eh.
Some of those who skipped the hearing sent excuse letters claiming that the probe is an attempt to curtail people's right to free speech and question the legality of the inquiry. But lawmakers find these reasons invalid, prompting the TRICOM to issue show cause orders against 9 resource persons, including attorney Trixie Angeles, Mark Anthony Lopez, and Crisette Chu.
We respectfully move that we will consult the legal department of this House for a possible disbarment case against Attorney Trixie Angeles to study if ever there is a relation, because he is an officer of the court. And he should respect the constitutional duty of Congress.
Some vloggers went to the Supreme Court on Tuesday instead and filed a petition against the Joint House panel's invitation.
Maliwanag para sa amin na ito ay paraan para malimit yung space o yung democratic space para makapagsalita.
They are weaponizing our respected institutions against ordinary citizens who are just practicing their God-given right to free expression.
A lawmaker defended the TRICOM's probe.
Ang layunin po natin dito ay gawa ng polisiya ang paggamit ng social media platforms. Dapat po meron tayong disiplina, meron tayong code of conduct, meron tayong ethics sa paggamit nitong social media.
He asked the resource persons whether there should be ethical standards or a code of conduct for social media users.
Merong mga journalist na nagpa-vlog, di ba? But vlogging does not make you a journalist. Yun kasi as a journalist kasi, we adhere to the core values of journalism, which are truthfulness, fairness.
Yes, the decency of the space has been crossed so much.
Barbers and other lawmakers expressed serious concern over the supposed rise of organized troll networks and the alleged weaponization of digital platforms to spread disinformation and attack public figures.
They are engaged in a well-orchestrated, well-funded campaign to spread disinformation, manipulate public perception, and destabilize institutions. The sources of funding for these operations remain in the shadows, possibly linked to illicit activities such as mobo operations or criminal syndicates.
Meron po kaming nahukay na pro-China na network of X accounts na nagsispread ng anti-Philippine sentiment.
Okay, unahin po natin
si push ng content related po kay Vice President Sara
Duterte.
But some experts warned about the risks of top-down government legislations against fake news.
That we could consider different kinds of legislation, hindi lang po imprisonment and fines penalizing social media users. Pwede din po ay legislation focused at big tech corporation na focus siya on content corrections. So mandating big tech to implement content corrections, or number two, administrative compliance measures for participating in transparency mechanisms with independent researchers.
There has to be a way to penalize the masterminds rather than yung individual trolls.
The Philippines currently ranks second in social media usage with 86.7 million users, according to data from the Department of Information and Communications Technology. Vivian Gulia, ABS-CBN News.
The Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency gets a new chief. Retired Police General Isagani Neres was appointed by President Marcos Jr. to replace Moro Virgilio Lazo, who led the agency since 2022. Neres was formerly Undersecretary of the Office of the Presidential Advisor on Police Matters. Neres was also part of the five-man committee which reviewed the records of erring cops at the start of Marcos Jr.'s term. The leadership change in the Anti-Narcotics Agency was done amid a congressional probe into the bloody drug war of the Duterte administration. Groups calling for the Philippine Vice President's impeachment are set to hold a vigil Wednesday outside the House of Representatives. They are demanding immediate action on 3 impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte. The activist group Bayan is spearheading the vigil. It warned President Marcos Jr. against obstructing the complaints. It also emphasized that the House of Representatives has a constitutional duty to initiate impeachment proceedings. The House Secretary General has said the complaints may be forwarded this week to the office of the Speaker. A lawmaker who endorsed one of the complaints is still confident that the House majority will support the Vice President's impeachment.
Na kailangan natin ipaalala sa House leadership, 2 buwan na pinatulog yung ating impeachment complaint, the first, the second, and the third. Just kung pa yung bibigay lang mga kasama natin dito sa House of Representatives dito sa issue ng umiikot ba. Pero ang nararamdaman ko sa ibang mga kasama, marami handa namang pumirma. Naghihintay lang sila ng tumpas o ng moment.
The Philippine Senate ratifies a bicameral conference committee report which resets the country's Bangsamoro regional election. The proposal moves the voting from May 12 to October 13. Senators approved the 5-month delay to give authorities more time to reinforce security for the polls. It also aims to give regional officials more room to address the impact of Sulu's exit from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. House Deputy Minority Leader and Basilan Representative Mujib Hataman disapproves of the postponement. Hataman insists it's time for the Bangsamoro people to elect their parliament members. The Election Commission says it will need fresh funding to carry out the rescheduled Bangsamoro polls. It also says the delay will affect preparations for village and youth council elections slated for December.
Mahirap sa part namin sapagkat kasabay pa rin yan sa paghahanda natin sa Barangay SK election ng December. Kaya lang kami ay tatalima sapagkat yan ay political decision ng ating legislative and later on kung mapipirma ng ating Pangulo ng Executive Department. Kaya lang, again, kung ito ay mas-separate sa national and local elections, nangangahulugan separate budget requirement yun. At katulad ng paulit-ulit kong sinasabi, kakailanganin namin ng 2.5 billion pesos para mapondohan yung mismong pagkukonduct ng parang special election yan sa Bangsamoro.
Social media kung saan nakakatrabaho pa rin sila pero nagagawa nila kung ano yung nararamdaman nila na gusto nilang gawin at yun ay magsalita at marinig sila ng taong bayan at ng mundo.
Philippines ending 2024 with a national debt of 16.05 trillion pesos, marking a 9.8% increase compared to 2023. The Bureau of Treasury says this rise is primarily due to the net issuance of debt instruments to fund government's deficit program. The depreciation of the peso against the US dollar also added over 208 billion pesos to the country's debt. As a result, the debt-to-GDP ratio reached 60.7%, slightly above the 60% international standard, and the Philippine government's target of 60.6%. A public budget analyst believes government needs to address the national budget effectively in order to reduce the country's debt.
It has to fix the national budget because there's no point in just fixing the level of the debt without fixing as well the national budget and how that's spent. That means addressing corruption and addressing wastage and misallocation in the national budget. The least that the government can do is to ensure that what the debt is financing, that means the specific programs and projects that the government is funding should benefit ordinary Filipinos so that the taxes that it imposes in order to pay the debts and finance the national budget wouldn't just go to pork barrel allocations of legislators. It has to go to very specific programs that directly benefit people in the communities.
President Marcos urges Filipinos to pay proper taxes and warns evaders they will be dealt with sternly. The president spoke during the launch of the Internal Revenue Bureau's 2025 National Tax Campaign. He says the Bureau's recent efforts, such as digitalization, are expected to boost collections and increase government revenue. Marcos assumed office in 2022 amid questions over his family's 200 billion peso estate tax deficiency.
And I say this with hope and with sternness. Hope that we all see the value in contributing to our country and that the law will deal sternly against those who exploit the system unfairly. To the BRR, your mandate is clear. Be watchful. Be guardians of a system that ensures that every peso that is collected is channeled into programs that serve our people.
Philippine inflation remained at 2.9% in January, unchanged from the December rate. Our correspondent Jervis Manahan joins us with details. Jervis, what more can you tell us?
Yes, Carmina, the Philippine Statistics Authority reported that headline inflation was steady at 2.9% in January 2025, which was at the same level it was in December last year. However, this is slightly higher than the 2.8% seen in the same month in 2024. Vegetables, particularly tomato, is the biggest contributor for the inflation rate last month. Tomato had 155% inflation, still as an effect of storms last year. Aside from vegetables, price increases also quickened for food and non-alcoholic beverages, alcoholic drinks and tobacco, as well as transport costs. The PSA noted that rice prices had negative inflation or deflated by 2.3%, which the Department of Agriculture attributes to the cut in tariff prices last July. This is still within the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas forecast range of 2.5 to 3.3% inflation for this month. The government hopes to keep inflation within 2 to 4% in 2025. After inflation averaged 3.2% in 2024. The National Economic and Development Authority said the steady inflation rate is a positive indicator of the government's commitment to ensure more stable prices in line with the government target. Carmina.
Thanks a lot, Jervis Manan there, joining us on the line. Well, House lawmakers have been called to a caucus today with at least one of them hinting it could be about the pending impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte. Vivian Gulia on the line now to tell us more about this. Viv, what more can you tell us?
Hi, Carmina. Big day today at the House of Representatives as it is expected to hold its last session day before Congress goes on a long break for the campaign and election season. Many people are waiting whether or not the lower chamber will act on the 3 impeachment complaints filed against Vice President Sara Duterte. This morning, several congressmen confirmed that a caucus was held or scheduled, but heading into that meeting, some of them said they did not know yet whether or not impeachment would be tackled. House Assistant Majority Leader and Taguig City 2nd District Representative Amparo Maria Zamora said the message she received regarding the meeting was, quote, vague, only stating, see you at Romualdez Hall. Caloocan City 2nd District Representative Mary Midley Kahayan Uy, for her part, said the meeting was called by the office of the House Speaker. House Deputy Minority Leader and ACT Church Party List Representative Franz Castro was not invited to the meeting. She told the media that she received information from a leader from the House majority saying that the meeting is indeed about the impeachment. Castro Guerrero was optimistic that the needed signature of at least 1/3 of House members will be secured at the lower chamber to elevate the impeachment complaint to the Senate without having to go through the House Committee of Justice. We will try to get more details on the results of the meeting later. In the meantime, endorsers and complainants will hold a mass this afternoon at 1 o'clock and a vigil afterwards to urge House members to act on the impeachment complaints they filed against Duterte last December. Carmina, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Vivian Guda there reporting to us on the line. Viv, keep us posted. Meanwhile, our correspondent RG Cruz just posted this on X. Officials and staff of the Senate have just briefed reporters covering the Senate regarding the possible receipt of impeachment complaint against VP Sara Duterte tonight. The scenario is the complaint is expected at 7 this evening at the Secretary's office. So with our correspondent Vivian Guda reporting from the House and that post from our correspondent RG Cruz from the Senate, we will try to put the pieces together as the day goes on. So be sure to stay tuned to ANC and also have your notifications on from all our social media pages to get the latest on this. The Supreme Court orders the Philippine government to comment on a petition questioning the legality of the 2025 national budget. Named as respondents in that petition, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, as well as Senate President Francis Escudero and House Speaker Martin Romualdez. This oral argument on petitions proposing the transfer of the funds to the National Treasury. Adrian Hannah reports.
Okay,
Petitioners insisted before the Supreme Court that it is unconstitutional to transfer 89.9 billion funds of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth to the National Treasury. August last year, the group of Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel filed a petition which challenged the constitutionality of the fund transfers, followed by similar petitions filed by Bayan Muna and Isang Bayan. Respondents to the petition are the House of Representatives, the Senate, PhilHealth, Department of Finance, and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The petitioners insisted that it was illegal to transfer the questioned funds based on the 2024 General Appropriations Act and the Department of Finance Circular number 003-2024.
Your Honors, the enumeration under the Constitution is exclusive. It does not authorize any government official to transfer appropriations. The authority to augment any item in the general appropriations must be given by law. PhilHealth's 2024 first quarter financial statements show the members' equity as being negative 600 billion plus. This is signed by the highest officials of PhilHealth, an express admission by PhilHealth that its equity is negative by over 600 billion.
Independent candidates.
October last year, the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order, but at that time, 60 billion of the 89.9 billion was already released. Speaking for the government, Solicitor General Bernardo Guevara asked during his opening statement to remove the name of President Marcos as one of the respondents, citing presidential immunity. Guevara maintained that there was nothing wrong with the PhilHealth fund transfers.
I assure the Honorable Court and the people that, contrary to what has been portrayed by some critics, there was no dark or sinister plan behind the transfer of the 16 billion peso fund balance from PhilHealth to the Treasury.
In an official statement, the DOF justified the prudent and moral decision to return supposed excess, idle, and unused government subsidies totaling 89.9 billion. The DOF also insisted that while PhilHealth has already returned 60 billion to the National Treasury, 78% were used for critical health projects. Included in the expenses was 27 billion pesos given to healthcare and non-healthcare workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the question hour, the DOF pointed out that PhilHealth's revenues are higher than its expenditures and had an accumulated fund of 464 billion pesos in 2024. In the 2025 national budget, PhilHealth was given a zero subsidy, but President Marcos Jr. pointed out that the state insurer would still have a reserve of 500 billion even without additional allocation. Associate Justice Amy Lazaro Javier countered that based on commission and audit letters to PhilHealth, the agency was supposedly bankrupt, and from 2021 to 2023, its reserve funds were depleted compared to its actuarial estimates. Before the oral arguments, protesters aired their demands outside the Supreme Court, further assailing the State Insurance Corporation.
Marami sa mga pera na nasa PhilHealth ang nagbe-benefit ay yung mga opisyales, napakalaki ng kanilang mga allowances at napakalaki ng mga pondong ginagastos nila para sa kanilang mga pangangailangan.
So all these things, ihingi namin sa Korte Suprema na sana magbigyan ang mamamayan na ang pondo diretso sa tao, wag nang sumabit pa sa politikal.
Of the 41 invited to the Tuesday hearing, only 3 showed up.
Wala tayong kalaban-laban. Ngayon, pag kaharap dito, hindi makaharap dito. Oo. Eh, mga takot din pala yung mga yan eh.
Some of those who skipped the hearing sent excuse letters, claiming that the probe is an attempt to curtail people's right to free speech and question the legality of the inquiry. But lawmakers find these reasons invalid, prompting the TRICOM to issue show-cause orders against 9 resource persons, including attorney Trixie Angeles, Mark Anthony Lopez, and Grisette Chu.
We respectfully move that we will consult
Okay, so basahin po natin ang balita ito.
of this House for a possible disbarment case against Attorney Trixie Angeles to study if ever there is a relation because he is an officer of the court. And he should
tatlong
constitutional duty of Congress.
Some vloggers went to the Supreme Court on Tuesday instead and filed a petition against the Joint House panel's invitation.
Maliwanag para sa amin na ito ay paraan para malimit yung space o yung democratic space para makapagsalita.
They are weaponizing our respected institutions against ordinary citizens who are just practicing their God-given right to free expression.
A lawmaker defended the TRICOM's probe.
Ang layunin po natin dito ay gawa ng polisiya ang paggamit ng social media platforms. Dapat po meron tayong disiplina, meron tayong code of conduct, meron tayong ethics sa paggamit nitong social media.
He asked the resource persons whether there should be ethical standards or a code of conduct for social media users.
Merong mga journalist na nagbablog, di ba? But blogging does not make you a journalist. Yun kasi as a journalist kasi, we adhere to the core values of journalism, which are truthfulness, fairness.
Yes, the decency of the space has been crossed so much.
Barbers and other lawmakers expressed serious concern over the supposed rise of organized troll networks and the alleged weaponization of digital platforms to spread disinformation and attack public figures.
They are engaged in a well-orchestrated, well-funded campaign to spread disinformation, manipulate public perception, and destabilize institutions. The sources of funding for these operations remain in the shadows, possibly linked to illicit activities such as BOGO operations or criminal syndicates.
Meron po kaming nahukay na pro-China na network of X accounts na nagsispread ng anti-Philippine sentiment habang nagpo-push ng content related po
kay Vice President Sara Duterte.
But some experts warned about the risks of top-down government legislations against fake news.
That we should consider different kinds of legislation, hindi lang po imprisonment and fines, penalizing social media users. Pwede din po ay legislation focus like big tech corporation na focus siya on content corrections. So mandating big tech to implement content corrections, or number two, administrative compliance measures for participating in transparency mechanisms with independent researchers.
There has to be a way to penalize the masterminds rather than yung individual trolls.
The Philippines currently ranks second in social media usage with 86.7 million users, according to data from the Department of Information and Communications Technology. Vivian Gulia, ABS-CBN News.
The Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea slamming Sige Party List Representative Rodante Marcoleta over his remarks dismissing the existence of the West Philippine Sea. During the House Tri-Committee hearing on Tuesday, Marcoleta claimed the West Philippine Sea does not exist. The statement comes amid what the PCG describes as a disinformation campaign on the issue.
Halimbawa kanina sabi ni Chair Dan, ang problema natin is the West Philippine Sea. Sabi natin,
the victims
sinong agency ng government ang nag-empower sa ating mga kababayan para malaman nilang complications ng West Philippine Sea? Isipin po natin, sir, there is nothing as West Philippine Sea. Wala po yun. That is a creation by us. Sa totoo lang po, kahit nabasahin mo yung ating mapa or what, there is no West Philippine Sea.
In response, Commodore J. Tariela fired back on X. He asserts the West Philippine Sea is not a mere fabrication. Dismissing it as such is a disservice and an embarrassment to the country. Philippine Air Force planes joined U.S. bombers in a joint exercise over an area in the West Philippine Sea that's tightly guarded by China's Coast Guard. This report from
the Philippine Air Force and the United States Pacific Air Forces held joint bomber air patrols and air intercept training over the West Philippine Sea on Tuesday. 3 Philippine F-A-50 leading trainer fighter aircraft and 2 U.S. B-1 bombers took part in the one-day exercise, which included flying over part of Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal. This is the first time such drills were conducted over the disputed shoal since U.S. President Donald Trump took office again. The shoal, which is within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, has been under China's control since 2012.
They're going to fly within the INSA. And within that is Bajo de Masinloc, which is part of our territory. Definitely expected that there will be challenges. There might be
bullet shell?
Aircraft, foreign aircraft, probably or flying near the flight, but they will definitely receive challenges also, especially if they're flying over our territory or near our territory. At the same time, there will be counter challenges as expected, but as for us, our doing this training based on international rules, peace order, and based on protocol, so we will just continue on regardless of the action of other foreigners.
The People's Liberation Army Southern Theater Command also conducted a routine patrol in the area. In a statement, the Chinese military accused the Philippines of trying to undermine peace and stability in the South China Sea by participating in the joint patrols of an external country. PAF spokesperson Colonel Maria Consuelo Castillo said the 2 air forces did not receive radio challenges and have not sighted PLA aircraft during the drills. Castillo also denied that the exercise between the 2 allies has something to do with the tension in the West Philippine Sea with Chinese ships, saying that such trainings are conducted regularly. Meanwhile, the 3 PLA Navy vessels earlier monitored to have entered Philippine waters are heading out of the country's EEZ. As of Tuesday morning, the Chinese vessels were located 120 nautical miles south of Basilan. The armed forces of the Philippines started tracking the Chinese vessels on Saturday. One of the ships came from Bajo de Masinloc and proceeded east of Mindoro, where it was joined by 2 other PLA Navy vessels. The vessels were monitored 26 nautical miles southeast of Cuyo Island in Palawan on Sunday. The PLA Navy ships passed through the Sulu Sea and exited through the Basilan Channel. Navy spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad, said the AFP kept a tight watch on the Chinese vessels as they passed through the Philippine archipelagic waters.
They were tracked by FF-17, PS-36, and 4 other Navy ships, 1 Philippine Navy aircraft, and 2 Philippine Air Force aircraft. This entailed the participation of Northern Luzon Command, Western Command, Central Command, and Western Mindanao Command. Our capability to be able to track, to monitor, and to hand over to the succeeding operational commands is a capability that the AFP has already today.
Trinidad explained the PLA Navy vessels exercised archipelagic sea lanes passage, noting that their track is a generally accepted track of merchant vessels traversing north to south of the country. But the official pointed out that the Chinese ships still committed violations.
Yung pagdaan ng mga tatlong barko ng PLA Navy is authorized under UN. Ang pagkakamali nila doon ay yung pagsagot nila sa mga challenge natin. Dapat binabanggit doon kung saan nanggaling, saan pupunta, identify yung barko kung sino sila. Ang sinagot lamang nila ay
nonetheless, the AFP said that the presence of the PLA Navy vessels in our waters is not a cause for alarm.
Campaign admits his office received a call from the ICC, which he ignored.
We will go to the Supreme Court. We will seek judicial relief kung talaga bang may jurisdiction ng ICC dito. Very clear yan. Very clear yan na yung kanila ginawa na hingi nila ng permiso, yung prosecutor, paghingi nila ng permiso sa court na mag-conduct ng investigation, effective na ang ating withdrawal sa membership. So, very clear, wala sa jurisdiction. May tawag sa opisina, gano'n. Pero bakit ko sa entertainin? That is tantamount to acknowledging or recognizing their jurisdiction over us. Kapag entertainin ko sila, umalis kayo. Wala kayong pakialam dito sa amin. Leave us alone. We can do our job here.
Senatorial aspirant Ping Lacson agreeing with observations the 2025 national budget is allegedly one of the most corrupt. During ABS-CBN's Harapan 2025, the former senator said the budget has been mangled beyond recognition.
Ang tawag ni President Bongbong sa ang description na ginawa niya, sabi ko mabait talaga si Presidente, suboptimal. Sabi ko hindi suboptimal itong budget ng 2025, subpar. Maraming problema. Yung budget message ng Presidente, nung sinabit yung NEP, National Expenditure Program, sa Kongreso, sa lower house, naka-specify doon, pati yung DBM, meron silang press briefer. Sinabi nila, yung education sector bibigyan ng highest budgetary priority in compliance with the Constitution. Pero composed of DepEd, CHED, SUCs, at saka TESDA. Apat lang. Bakit isisingit mo ngayon yung PMA?
Catch Harapan 2025 with Senator Ronald De La Rosa later at 1 this afternoon and former Senator Ping Lacson at 1:30 here on ANC with replays at 10 and 10:30 this evening.
On unsubstantiated claims of widespread fraudulent activity.
and misuse of funds within the government warrants careful consideration. While such accusations have become a recurring feature of his political rhetoric, their timing, occurring as Kamala Harris's name increasingly surfaces as a potential contender for the presidency, cannot be ignored. By amplifying these claims of corruption, Trump hopes
for millions of pesos.
stirring up the same emotions that came
And Cambodia's Prime Minister offers to help the Philippines with its food security emergency.
outside groups. Trump might have already noticed is not to give them time, money, and effort to assist in the process. Before you move on, make sure to like and subscribe for all the
Good evening, I'm Tony Velasquez. On our broadcast tonight, the national campaign period for the 2025 Philippine midterm polls has officially begun. The administration's senatorial ticket and their rivals held proclamation rallies Tuesday. The Alianza ng Bagong Pilipinas candidates were joined by President Marcos Jr. at their campaign kickoff in the Chief Executive's home province of Ilocos Norte. Pia Gutierrez joins us from the Ilocos Norte capital. Pia?
Perhaps Trump has noticed the rise of Harris in certain
Hi, Tony. Straight from his meeting with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet in Malacanang, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. flew straight here in his hometown, Ilocos Norte, to give support to the administration's senatorial candidates under the coalition Alianza para sa Bagong Pilipinas in the first day of the campaign period for the 2025 midterm polls. All 12 of the coalition senatorial bets were present in the inaugural proclamation rally attended by thousands of Marcos supporters from various towns of Ilocos Norte and neighboring northern Luzon provinces. This includes the president's sister, Senator Heidi Marcos, who earlier declined to be part of her brother's slate. In his speech, the president appealed for the public support for the administration bets as he highlighted their years of experience in public service as senators, congressmen, local chief executives, and members of the cabinet.
Okay, sige po. Continue lang natin
Hindi
ito
lamang
po.
buo sa numero, ngunit
report ito.
buo ang loob para ipaglaban ang kapakanan ng
Nyo kaya nyo na tanggalin ang programa
naging
ko.
kandidato nag-deliver lang yata ng suka nabigyan na ng certificate of candidacy. Dahil wala naman natin, wala ang ikukumpara sa ating mga kandidato.
Sige lang mga sukin, no?
The president, meanwhile, did not mince words as he delivered jabs against opposition candidates supported by his predecessor, former President Rodrigo Duterte. While he did not name names, Marcos Jr. reminded the public of the controversies and issues against opposition candidates, including their supposed roles in the bloody drug war, allegations of corruption during the height of the pandemic, and loyalty to China amid their illegal incursions and bullying of Filipinos in the West Philippine Sea.
Wala sa kanilang kasabwat sa pagpulsa ng sako-sakong pera, pinagsamantalaan ang krisis ng pandemya, pinabayaan ang ating mga kababayan na magkasakit at mamatay. Wala sa kanila ang mga pumapalakpak sa China at natutuwa pa kapag tayo ay pinobomba ng tubig. Tinatamaan ang ating mga Coast Guard, hinaharang ang ating mga mangingisda, ninanakaw ang kanilang huli.
Bumalik na lahat.
At bukod pa rin ay inaagaw pa ang mga isla natin para maging bahagi ng kanilang bansa. Wala po sa kanila ang tilang sakristan ng isang bulaang propeta na nasasakdal dahil sa pagyurak sa ating kabataan at sa ating kababaihan. Wala sa kanila ang tagataguyod ng pugad ng krimen. Nais pa natin bumalik sa landas na umaapaw sa dugo ng mga inosenteng mga bata na inagaw sa kanilang mga anak, mga ina, kinuha sa kanilang mga tahanan at inagaw ang kanilang kinabukasan. Kaya naman, makakatiyak po kayo na kapag ang ating mga kandidato ay naluklok sa Senado at sila ay nagsimula ng kanilang trabaho, asahan po ninyo na sila po ay hindi makikihalo, hindi makikilaho sa ganyang bagay na ating iniwanan na at naayaw balikan.
Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos denied a supposed rift with her brother. This amid their conflicting stand on various issues, particularly with the rift between the President and Vice President Sara Duterte. In her speech, which was delivered in Ilocano, the senator says it is important for them to set aside their differences to be able to address the most pressing issues such as inflation, unemployment, and poverty. Meanwhile, prior to the proclamation rally, the administration candidates fielded questions, particularly on the issue of the impeachment of Vice President Duterte. Most of them, however, refused to answer should they win and serve as senator judges in the impeachment trial in the future. But former Senator Vicente Soto III, however, believes that the issue will most likely be brought to the Supreme Court, as there are currently doubts whether the trial will be tackled by the 20th Congress.
Merong rules of procedure sa impeachment trial na nung namin na ako majority leader noon. At doon nakasaad na shall continue the session until final judgment of is rendered. Ngayon, doon sa rules ng Senate as a legislative body, merong conflicting. Ang sinasabi ko, all matters and procedures and proceedings shall terminate upon expiration of one Congress. On June 13, the 19th Congress will expire. So, conflicting ito ngayon.
Prompting questions about whether the pressure of a potential terrorist challenge.
Tony, now that the campaign for the midterm elections is now in full swing, the administration coalition is set to bring their campaign to the city of Iloilo and stronghold of the Duterte's, Davao City, in the coming days. All of them will be attended by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Tony?
All right, thank you very much, Pia Gutierrez, for that live update from Lawag, Ilocos Norte. Two staunch allies of ex-Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte also launched their senatorial campaigns Tuesday. Re-electionist Senators Ronald Bato de la Rosa and Christopher Bongo are running alongside detained televangelist Apollo Quiboloy. The pastor's supporters kicked off Quiboloy's campaign in Pasig City. The event was held without Quiboloy, who is currently in jail on charges of human trafficking and sexual abuse. Other bets endorsed by former President Duterte, such as Jimmy Bondoc and Senator De La Rosa, were expected to attend the event. Senator Go kicked off his campaign in his bailiwick, Davao City. The Philippine Election Commission marks the start of the national campaign period with a crackdown on illegal campaign materials. The Commission's chairman says these can be used as evidence to disqualify the candidates who had them put up. This story from Johnson Manang.
The Commission on Elections kicked off its Oplan Baklas before dawn on Tuesday, February 11, the start of the official campaign period for the national positions for the 2025 midterm elections. Oplan Baklas involves the removal of illegal campaign materials, such as posters placed on non-designated areas. COMELEC Chairman George Erwin Garcia and other officials of the Commission led the operation in Tondo, Manila. According to Garcia, the Commission will go after candidates who will violate election laws.
Tama ang size, kaya lang mali. Mali ang pinaglalagyan, mali rin yung mismong gamit ng mga materyales. Sabi natin, pwede namang gumamit kahit na karton, kahit na papel, o kahit na cloth man lang.
However, campaign materials posted in private properties cannot be taken down.
Hindi po namin pwedeng tanggalin yung nasa private properties sapagkat yan po ay protektado ng karapatan ng mismo may-ari ng property na yan.
The Commission's task force, Oplan Baklas, also did not remove illegal campaign materials of local candidates for now.
Okay, continue ko lang ang
they don't have the
isang
authority
paragraph
yet
kasi, no?
to take them down since the campaign period for local candidates will start on March 28.
Okay, the motive of the
It will
suspects
keep all confiscated
remain
posters and use them as evidence in filing appropriate charges.
Okay.
The COMELEC chairman said there are designated common poster areas posted in public places. The poll chief assured candidates that it would observe due process before filing disqualification cases against anyone.
Sa mga susunod na araw, susulatan na po natin sila magbaklas. Sila naglagay dyan kami pahihirapan magtanggal. Batas yun. Napasasulatan namin sila, bigyan ng notice, kinakailangan tanggalin ng 3 araw.
While there are no fines, it could be a ground for disqualification of a candidate. Meanwhile, Comelec reminded all candidates to observe the campaign spending limit. Chairman Garcia reiterated the rule that a political party candidate can only spend 3 pesos per registered voter. Those who do not belong to any political party, on the other hand, can only spend 5 pesos per registered voter. He also said the Commission will strictly implement the cap for political advertisements on television and radio. Candidates are only allowed to have 120 minutes airtime for television and 180 minutes for radio. Meanwhile, environmental group Eco-Waste Coalition made an appeal to all candidates this midterm elections to protect the environment.
Nakikita po natin ang bulto-bultong basura na nagge-generate po natin dahil lamang sa walang patumangga nating paggamit, lalong-lalo na po ng mga plastic na tarpaulin.
Eco-Waste Coalition Zero campaigner Ochi Tolentino said candidates should consider using eco-friendly campaign materials. Johnson Manabat, ABS-CBN News.
Philippine police arrest 3 suspects who offered to help several local candidates win in exchange for a huge sum of money. The suspects had posed as IT specialists of the Election Commission. Jeff Caparas reports.
3 members of a suspected criminal group promising a sure win in the May midterm polls were arrested by operatives of the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group in Marikina City Monday afternoon. The operation was prompted by a complaint from 2 local candidates. According to the complainants, the suspects claimed they can manipulate election results in exchange for 90 million pesos.
Wala kong intention na humingi ng suporta sa kanila. Dahil hindi ko kaya yung iniling ng kwan. Ang intention ko na lamang ay mahuli ang mga ito. Mahuli. Kasi pinagmamalaki nila. O ayan, tinulungan namin si yung kalaban ko. Ayan, hindi ka mananalo talaga sa eleksyon.
Authorities say the suspects would approach election rivals and make the same offer. They would later claim a particular candidate won because of them.
Budol po talaga ito, itong mga scheme na ganito. Kahit pa sabihin nila may kakilala sila, they are capitalizing on the weakness and the desperation of the candidates. 50-50 chance, pareho po kayong pagkakakitaan ng mga taong ito.
According to the CIDG, the suspects would pose as IT specialists with deep connections to the COMELEC.
They have this kind of influence that they're peddling, that they're able to manipulate the machines, they will be able to manipulate the personnel operating these machines, and many other schemes that, of course, are the truth.
The CIDG also says the group would also justify their huge fees by saying that they need to give a cut to the COMELEC contacts. But the COMELEC says any offers that promise a sure election victory should immediately be considered as fake. The poll body also says the suspects are in no way connected to the agency.
Wala silang record sa Commission on Elections, pero sila'y nagpapanggap, nagsusuot kunwari ng jacket na may logo ng COMELEC.
Yung grupo na nahuli natin ay manggagansyo talaga yan sila. Wala po silang kapasidad para magpapanalo ng kandidato. Kasi yung dinadala nila na kampanya ay props lang nila yun. Wala talaga silang kakayahan technologically na mag-manipulate ng result or whatever documents regarding sa COMELEC election.
CIDG adds the suspects had no background in information technology.
Purely sa pagkakaalam natin sa ngayon, yung information at evidence na hawak natin ay secretary, driver at hindi sila expert ng IT. Mga scammer lang sila.
The suspected fraudsters are facing robbery extortion charges and violation of the Omnibus Election Code. The CIDG says they are tracking down 8 other accomplices. Jeff Caparas, ABS-CBN News.
2 former Liberal Party senators teamed up Tuesday for the launch of their campaign to return to the Philippine Senate. Kiko Pangilinan and Bam Aquino were joined by former Vice President Leni Robredo in rallying their supporters in Quezon City and Cavite. This report from Paige Javier.
Tara na! Ipanalo na natin Senator Bam Aquino at Senator Kiko
Okay.
Pangilinan!
Meron namang katanungan doon, no?
Former Vice President
Will Trump
Lenny Robredo
destroy
expressed her full support
United
for
States
Kiko Pangilinan
of
and Bam Aquino
America?
during the People's
natin
Campaign
kay
kickoff
Professor,
rally in Dasmariñas City Arena. Both candidates are seeking a return to the Senate. Robredo recalled her 2022 presidential campaign while reminding the crowd that the fight is not yet over.
Alam ko na para sa marami, hindi pa nawawala ang kirot ng pagkabigo. Sabi ng iba, grabe naman. 3 years na, hindi pa din nakakalimutan yung heartbreak. Pero, hindi pwedeng manatili na lang tayo sa pagkabigo at paninisi. Dahil hindi naman natapos ang laban noong 2022. At hindi rin doon natapos ang ating tungkulin bilang mga Pilipino. Hindi tayo pwedeng tumigil.
The former vice president also made this appeal to supporters.
Muli tayong bumaba sa mga komunidad, nating buhayin ang lakas, ang sigla at ang saya nung nakaraang kampanya. Dahil hindi pa tapos ang ating laban.
The program opened with statements of support from Sherwin and Tintin Abdon. Sherwin was the motorcycle rider who offered the former vice president a ride in her first rally in Cavite in 2022. Mamamayang Liberal Party list nominees, former Senator Laila de Lima and former Congressman Teddy Baguilad and Erin Tanyada also took the stage. Akbayan Party list nominee Attorney Chel Yocno likewise made an appearance at the kickoff rally. Before the rally in Cavite, the tandem attended mass in UP Diliman along with the former vice president. The Kiko Bam tandem is optimistic they can crack the magic 12 despite a recent poll result on voters' preference.
Maaga pa friends, first day pa lang. Tsaka kung mapapansin nga, ngayon pa lang talaga lumalabas rin yung mga volunteers. Kaya naniniwala kami, gaya rin ng dati, gaya nung 2022.
We just need to campaign as hard as we can. No, sabi nga nila, sa ganitong eleksyon, kailangan nating manlimos ng boto.
Pangilinan went house to house at the nearby barangay Cruz Naligas after the mass. The wife of Aquino, Temi Gomez Aquino, also visited communities to campaign for her husband. Meantime, the Akbayan Party List launched their campaign with a Zumba session also in UP Diliman.
Siyempre, iba ang takbo ng party list at nag-adjust pa tayo sa mga mangyayari. But I'm looking forward and very optimistic.
This campaign season, babalik tayo sa ating mga communities. Meron tayong intensified na pag-aakbayan ng mga kapitbahayan sa buong Pilipinas.
Both say they are not losing hope despite the groups showing in recent surveys. Yocno later made the rounds in Tondo, Manila with Senator Risa Ontiveros, who is also from Akbayan. In Zamboanga City, Akbayan's third nominee, Dada Kiramis Mula, held a fluvial parade to show her pride and heritage as a member of the Moro community. Back in Manila, a send-off rally was held for Kabayan Coalition candidates at the Kartilyan ng Katipunan.
Wala man kami bilyon-bilyon o milyon-milyon na boto. So makikita naman natin yung yung suporta ng iba't ibang mga sektor sa amin ng ating buong bansa. Kaya talagang kakayod kami sa loob ng 90 days na campaign period.
Yung sinasabi na ground campaigning, yun talaga yung mahalaga para sa amin Kasi sabi nga natin, wala tayo po bilyon para sa advertisement. Tayo po nagbabank on sa mass movement.
Former leader Danilo Ramos hopes to go from the field to the Senate.
Magsasaka, itanim sa Senado, palakasin ang lokal na
As the country kicked off the campaign period for the midterm polls, the stand of aspiring senators on the impeachment of Vice
Vice President Sara Duterte will be a key consideration
Ayan.
in some voters' decision to favor a candidate.
Yung sa senador na lang yung inaantay kung may impeach si Sara o hindi.
Kailangan talaga yung mga mapagkakatiwalaan.
At least 2 congressmen
Ayan na.
also believe the
Okay,
impeachment
itong si
will be an election issue.
Senator Bato
They
de la
issued the
Rosa,
statement
pakinggan
after
natin
Senate
naman
President
ito.
Francis Escudero said the trial will possibly begin after the President's State of the Nation address in July, which means 12 newly elected senators would have assumed office then.
Dapat nating tanungin ng ating mga ihinahalal kung dapat bang panugutin ng mga tao patungkol sa pagwawaldas ng pera ng bayan, patungkol sa hindi pagsunod sa saligang batas.
I think definitely magiging election issue po ito and it should be welcome.
Zamora meanwhile pointed out that the legislative calendar for the 3rd regular session of Congress provides that its break begins on February 8th, which means the Senate could technically have had the time to address the articles of impeachment filed by the lower chamber on February 5th if it did not adjourn that day. Despite this, the House Prosecution Panel will not call on the Senate to hold a special session or schedule the impeachment trial, according to Gutierrez.
Natapos ang session, ang plenary session nila nung Feb 5, pero technically may panahon pa, may 2 araw pa po. Pero having said that, again, ginagalang natin ang kung ano man ang gagawin ng ating Senado.
Senator J.V. Ejercito says there is no clamor among his colleagues to call for a special session. He asserts the Senate should not be blamed if it has yet to convene as an impeachment court to tackle the complaint filed by the lower chamber. But at least one House lawmaker argues the pursuit for justice does not follow a timeline.
Nagtataka ko bakit naman sa last day, alas 5 ng hapon. Sana kung mas maaga nila ginawa, pinorward, hindi sana inabutan ng break ng Kongreso. Our colleagues are not here.
Okay, huwag po tayo tatanggap ng pera sa election mga suki, no? Paano makukumpleto huwag tayo magtanggap ng pera sa election.
Impeachment court, kung kalahati ay nangangampanya, you cannot blame them for hindi naman lahat sure.
Kung may gusto, may paraan. So, ibig sabihin, kung talagang gusto na magkaroon ng trial ngayon, mangyayari yon. Even ngayong eleksyon, yung kinakailangan na hustisya ng mamamayan, hindi pwedeng next time na lang.
Akbayan Party List Representative Percival Sendanya slams Escudero for allegedly delaying the impeachment proceedings, which he says would only benefit the Vice President.
We are extremely dismayed by the pronouncement of the Senate President para pag-risking yung chance of holding Sara Duterte accountable, especially post-2025 elections. Yung panabagan natin sa Senado, konting sense of urgency naman.
Meanwhile, Gutierrez believes the prosecution has enough evidence to convince the Senate impeachment court to convict Vice President Duterte and remove her from office. He also believes it will be better if the subject of the trial will attend. The Senate President had said the upper chamber sitting as an impeachment court will not force Duterte to attend the trial unless necessary. Vivian Gulia, ABS-CBN News.
A retired Philippine police general surrenders to a Manila court which ordered his arrest for an allegedly staged drug bust in 2022. Benjamin Santos presented himself to the court shortly after he arrived from Singapore Tuesday. The former deputy police chief for operations was temporarily freed after he posted bail of 200,000 pesos.
Ayan.
General Santos last week sent surrender feelers. Actually, surrender feelers and request for assistance para sa kanyang pag-post ng bail. So kanina dumating siya, minute siya ng mga PNP personnel sa airport, and together with his lawyer, they voluntarily surrendered to RTC Branch 44 in Manila, and they facilitated the posting of the bail. So kanina meron na siyang release order, and he's already temporarily a free man.
Santos and 28 other active and former police officers were ordered arrested for an alleged cover-up of a 2022 Manila drug bust. 7 of them are still at large. The flood-hit capital of the Philippine province of Palawan is under a state of calamity. Several villages in Puerto Princesa are still flooded due to days of heavy rain. The affected residents are already calling for help. Floods have also submerged several towns in southern Palawan. Rescue teams came to the aid of several people who were stranded by floods in the municipality of Nara. Coming up, Cambodia's Prime Minister pledges his government's help to ease a rice emergency in the Philippines. Stay tuned to The World Tonight. We're back on The World Tonight. Cambodia's Prime Minister assures President Marcos Jr. that his country can supply agricultural products to ease the food security emergency of the Philippines. Katrina Domingo reports.
Cambodia is ready to help address the Philippines' food security program. That is what Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet told President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. during their meeting in Malacanang.
On bilateral front, we are committed to taking our cooperation to new heights. We identify new opportunities to boost trade and investment flows. In agriculture, Cambodia stands ready to contribute to the Philippine food security through rice supply as well as many other food products.
Marcos Jr. thanked his Cambodian counterpart for meeting with Filipino business leaders during his first trip to Manila to invite them to invest in industries that can help improve rice production and value chains. Marcos Jr. describes Hun's dialogues and exchanges as a fruitful networking opportunity for potential business collaborations.
We also see Cambodia as an important partner in ensuring food security. I am pleased that we have come to an agreement to pursue stronger collaboration in agriculture and in agribusiness. Accordingly, I expressed my hope for both Filipinos and Cambodians in the agricultural sector to actively participate in various programs under this agreement.
Cambodia's commitment to provide rice comes a week after the Philippines declared a food security emergency to pump cheaper rice to the market to temper the extraordinary hike in the price of the staple grain. Aside from the deal on agriculture, Marcos Jr. and Hun also witnessed the signing of agreements to eliminate double taxation, as well as cooperation on the fields of digital transformation, tourism, education, competition and investment promotion, and the prevention of looting and illegal trafficking of cultural properties.
We have exchanged views on ASEAN matters and other regional issues. We also discussed comprehensively our determined efforts to combat transnational crimes and protect our communities from unscrupulous individuals who take advantage of the industrious nature and strong sense of family of our peoples.
While Marcos Jr. and Hun reaffirmed their commitment to battle transnational crime and address issues in the region, what was notably absent from the statement of the two leaders was a direct mention of the growing tensions in the South China Sea due to the repeated incursions of China, also known as the largest foreign investor in Cambodia.
Cambodia underlines the importance of upholding ASEAN unity.
Katrina Domingo, ABS-CBN News.
Philippine shares deepen their losses as sentiment remains fragile over local and global headwinds. Michelle Ong.
Most Asian markets declined Tuesday as renewed U.S. tariffs under President Donald Trump fueled a broader risk-off sentiment, while a holiday in Japan kept trading volume subdued. In the Philippines, stocks extended their declines, with overall sentiment remaining fragile amid external and internal risks. Investors also bracing for the BSP's first meeting of the year this Thursday, where a 25 basis point cut is being priced in.
I've never seen valuations
Ayan.
at levels
Ah,
we're seeing
so,
today. They're sitting at pandemic
ang
lows.
sakop po ni Bubin Hantian,
And I understand that there's a level of frustration, especially coming from particular sectors.
area po ng
You know,
Tabuan
if you look
Lasa,
at the consumer sector, we've seen a huge de-rating across the board. In fact, a lot of panic happening. Everybody's assuming because volume has been negative in 2024, we've seen consumer companies derated from like 25, 30 times PE, now sitting at 13 to 15 times. Our thesis remains the same, has always been the same since 2024. Buying companies get paid to wait, and I think the dividend today, especially for select companies, are very attractive at today's level.
In corporate stories, ABS-CBN Corporation is in talks with creditors for possible refinancing of existing loans due in the near term. During the company's special stockholders meeting, President and CEO Carlo Katigbak said the company has been consistently fulfilling its obligations to its lenders. He said they're currently in discussions with creditors to refinance loans and are hopeful they will come to an agreement soon. Meanwhile, ABS-CBN Corporation Chairman Martin Lopez explained why the number of directors were reduced from 7 from 11 in line with the amendment of Article 6 of the amended Articles of Incorporation. He says the scale and scope of ABS-CBN's operations have been reduced significantly. The company is streamlining the number of directors in line with the reduced scale of its business. The company also gave updates on its recent partnerships, including the collaboration with GMA Network for the latest edition of the popular Pinoy Big Brother franchise.
Indonesia already, sort of imposed the quota. There are more than 300, I think, nickel mines in compared to ours. It's just more than 30, so it's just about 10% of the size. So just a lot, and they have right now, I think, more than 60 processing plants. So it's clustered. Yeah, we have two.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Nickel Industry Association urging government not to ban nickel ore exports. PNIA President Dante Bravo, who also heads Global Ferronickel, the country's second largest nickel producer, explains, "We cannot copy Indonesia's playbook just yet without the right government policy, support, infrastructure, and upskilling engineering talent." Michelle Long, ABS-CBN News.
Internationally renowned Filipino chef and restaurateur Margarita Flores has passed away. She was 65 years old. Her son Amado announced the news on social media. He did not provide further details. Flores was a two-time cancer survivor. She was named Asia's Best Female Chef in 2016 and was knighted by the Italian government for her work in promoting the country's cuisine and culture. In September 2019, she was tapped by the UN to be its ambassador for gastronomic tourism. Flores ran several restaurants in the Philippines, which include her flagship brand, Chibo. Our final word tonight is a quote from Bertrand Russell. "The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge." And that is the world tonight, the 11th of February, 2025. I'm Tony Velasquez from the Philippines. Thank you. Mabuhay!
Okay, hanggang dito na po ang trabaho natin. Follow na tayo.
Good afternoon, I'm Ron.
And I'm Denise Inside.
This is Top Story.
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
We begin with the top stories across the Philippines today. The campaign period for the 2025 election officially kicks off. The Commission on Elections begins dismantling illegal campaign materials. The Philippines and Cambodia vow to work together for peace and prosperity in the region. The Philippine Health Department confirms a rise in influenza cases in Japan. And a former police official tagged in the alleged mishandling of a massive drug haul in Manila surrenders. The campaign race is officially on for the 65 senatorial
so hindi po
candidates and
kaya
155
pinaparalyze ang
party list
news
groups
natin
vying
dahil
for
kahit
seats in
papaano
May
ay nakaprogram
2025
din.
midterm elections.
Okay,
The
salamat.
90-day campaign period for national
so
positions
mamayang
kicked
hapon
off
doon ako
today,
sa,
February 11, and will run until May 10, 2025. Several candidates have already launched their proclamation rallies, including Akbayan Party List, the Makabayan Slate, and the administration-backed Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas. The 12-man Alyansa slate, joined by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., held its rally in Lawag City, Ilocos Norte, the president's home province, to woo voters. The campaign comes in the shadows of a bitter feud between the president and his vice president, Sara Duterte, who was impeached by the lower house last week. But the Marcos-backed candidates are urging the public to avoid what they call divisive politics.
The Filipino people are tired.
14 years na natin ginagawa ito
sa bangayan dito, bangayan doon. Diyos ko po, November pa ho yan, last year pa. Hanggang ngayon ba? Ang mission lang po ng mga kandidato di sa Alyansa is to present ourselves na makita sana ng mga tao yung performance ng bawat isa. Wala pong negative tactics. Kahit ako siguro, imbis na mag-focus ka na siraan mo yung kabila, pagod na po yung tao doon eh. We will just have to campaign po,
okay, so lahat na may katapusan.
Yung mga ikang
kailangan na magpapaalam tayo.
O nais po ng administrasyon.
Sa umagang ito, umaga ng Miyerkules.
Former Senators Kiko Pangilinan and Bam Aquino attended a mass with their supporters as they officially launched their bids to get back in the upper chamber. They were joined by former Vice President Leni Robredo, whose 2022 presidential campaign was handled by Aquino. Pangilinan immediately made the rounds in Barangay Cruz Naligas in Quezon City, going door to door to woo voters. Veteran campaign strategist Alan Herman believes Pangilinan and Aquino have improved their strategies in getting their message across.
Hindi po kayo ipaparalyze.
If you look at the messaging of Senator Kiko, he's very clear. He's talking about food now, as he was earlier, as he was even during his vice presidential campaign. But he really polished that message and turned it into a sharp nail. He's talking about still very aligned with this hello pagkain goodbye gutom. So he's talking about literally a gut issue right now, a stomach issue. And Senator Bam is focusing on education.
Meanwhile, the senatorial bets of the Makabayan bloc kicked off their campaign in the city of Manila. The Makabayan bloc is fielding 11 candidates in the Senate race. Herman says the Makabayan bets face an uphill climb against fellow candidates who have more resources.
Unfortunately, when you're running for the Senate or any national position, that ratio shifts wildly. It's 70% retail. You need to really establish strong awareness before you go to conversion. So the problem with these candidates is that their awareness is usually under 50%. It costs a lot of money. You need ads, you need even just the
Tuesday, coinciding with the start of the official campaign
period tapusin na natin kahit na walang titulo, no?
Common Chairman George Erwin Garcia and other officials of the Commission led the operation in Tondo, Manila. Garcia says the Commission will take it seriously this time to go after candidates who will continuously violate election laws. Garcia, however, admitted it cannot just remove campaign materials posted on private properties. The task force Oplan Baklas did not remove yet the campaign materials of local candidates.